After spending a week exploring Edinburgh and the Highlands of Scotland, we made the 90-minute journey north to St. Andrews, the home of golf. St. Andrews is right on the east coast of the country, in a region known as the Kingdom of Fife. Fife is the last remaining kingdom in Scotland. Even though that doesn't mean a whole lot anymore, it's a unique look into how Scotland used to be separated into smaller kingdoms. It wasn't a united country until much later on. The Kingdom of Fife has a lot of cool connections to history, and this includes the most famous golf course in the entire world, the Old Course at St. Andrews. Here at hole number 1, and hole number 1 actually shares a fairway with hole number 18, which is obviously where the Open is going to end, where the iconic final putt is going to happen. And this is really amazing. People are just walking around. I thought you had to pay for a tour. I guess it must be because the course is shut down for all the infrastructure going in for the actual tournament, all the seats and everything. I'm not complaining. So we're walking right down fairway number 1 right now, and this is all just open to the public right now. Sorry about the wind noise, if we're really getting hit in the face with wind.
We really did not expect to even set foot on the Old Course.
It's very, very hard to get a reservation here at this course. You have to do it well in advance. It looks like they're not really having anyone go out because of the infrastructure. It's so cool to be here.
It's so cool.
I knew that the Open was this year, but I wasn't sure if they would have everything up yet. According to the old record books, this is the oldest golf course in the world. St. Andrews is where golf was invented, and there is a rich history of golf here. Fast forward to 2022, and it is still quite famous. If you walk with me this way, you'll see that there's actually a grandstand set up right now for the 150th Open Championship. So the Open is played here a lot, and it's also considered one of the 4 major tournaments of the PGA. Now the St. Andrews Old Course plays host to this tournament once every 4 or 5 years or so. It's usually within that cycle, but they made sure that the 150th anniversary of this historic tournament was played right here where golf started. If you come with me this way too, you'll kind of see that we're almost kind of in this huge field. It's very different than what you think of for a normal golf course. We're here on the first fairway, and it basically is a shared fairway with the 18th as well. So you go out this way, this is the first hole, you can see the hole in the distance, and then you come right back the same way, and the 18th green and the iconic end to the tournament happens right here in this little corner. What's really interesting about this course is that it's a link style course, which means that there are no trees. You're gonna go through this entire course. It's very flat, there's not a lot of hills to it. So what does that mean? It means the wind comes in hard, especially since we're so close to the water. That's what makes it really difficult, even for professional golfers. You might think it's easy because it's all flat and there's really no tricks and turns to it. You can't get stuck behind a tree or anything. But with the wind, I mean, your ball can just take off the other way. You have to really play the directions and really strategize around that.
I grew up on a little 9-hole course, and in our clubhouse there is a famous painting of the Old Course's clubhouse, which is right here. Now I don't know too much about golf, but I do know this is hallowed ground I am standing on. And this iconic backdrop behind me, it's just so surreal to be here.
Now, like we said, you may think that since everything is flat, it would actually be an easy course to play. This is not the case at all. There aren't that many bunkers here, but the ones that are here are very, very deep. So they're really hard to dig yourself out of. Bobby Jones, who's most famous for designing Augusta National Golf Course, where the Masters tournament is played every year, he played in the 1921 Open Championship. And there was a point at one of these bunkers, he could not get out of it. He took 4 different strokes, and after he just snapped his club, he lost his temper, and he was disqualified from the tournament. Fast forward a couple years later, he actually won the tournament, and he talked about how the bunkers themselves, you just have to learn how to play them, and you have to be very patient with them. And I wonder if that had any influence in how the bunkers are designed at the Masters at Augusta National. They're obviously very, very different golf courses. At the Masters, you have a lot of trees, very narrow fairways. Here, it's basically the exact opposite. I always thought that was a funny little story with the bunker.
Now, we promise there's more to see of St. Andrews than just the Old Course, but there are 2 iconic landmarks that we have to check out before we go.
This bridge is known as the Swilken Bridge. It's just a little stone bridge that crosses this stream. The bridge itself is kind of unassuming. It's just a little stone bridge that goes over, but it's more of just an iconic shot because it's when the golfers are coming into the last hole. Jack Nicklaus, when he made his farewell to golf, this is where he did it from back in 2005. When Tom Watson, he did the same thing. It's kind of just a tradition for golfers when they're close to retiring to give a little farewell to the game of golf. It's just a really nice way for them to kind of pay homage to the game. Think of how many legends have walked across this bridge. So the last landmark of this historic course that we really wanted to show you, since we got this amazing opportunity to just walk around it before Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Dustin Johnson, all of the big names of golf are going to be right here, right where we're standing. This is the road bunker. This is what they call it because it's really close to the road right here. They call it the road hole. It's not uncommon for golfers to end up on the road. That's why they call it the road hole. Interestingly enough, you have to hit it right off the road. There's usually rules where if you're on a certain surface, you can move your ball. Not here. You have to hit it off the road, and that's kind of just one of the quirks of this course. The bunker itself, I mean, look at how deep this is. They call them pothole bunkers. So this bunker is famous because it has frustrated a lot of the greatest golfers in the world. It's just not a place you want to end up, especially if the hole location is a little bit back. A lot of guys, when they're trying to fly the pin, they'll end up right down here. It's almost 7 feet deep from the bottom of it to the top. There's times when you literally just have to dig it up and almost hit it straight up into the air so that your ball doesn't hit the side and you end up right back in there. We were talking about Bobby Jones before. He's not the only one. We've seen a lot of golfers throughout the ages have to take 4 or 5 strokes to get out of this bunker. And there's a few more like this on the course, but this one's most famous because you also have the road as well. This is a tough hole, and this is the second last hole. So when guys are coming in Sunday afternoon and they're trying to win the tournament, this is where they have to be at their peak performance. St. Andrews, it may look easy, but that is just on the surface. This is a very quirky course, and it frustrates a lot of the game's best.
It's so funny to me that people are actually walking their dogs here on the course. And back home, that's what we do with our dog. We take her on the course to play fetch and just to have her run around, but it's so funny that dogs are allowed here on one of the most iconic courses in the world.
This thick grass that we're walking through, I can't imagine having to get your ball out of it, and that's actually the big struggle that a lot of these golfers go through. So you have the wind factor, you have the deep grass, and amazingly, the deep grass is not that far from the fairway. The fairway is right here. Hole number 18, same fairway as hole number 1, par 4, 356 yards. Most pros can drive that. What's really interesting about this course is that you see a lot of low numbers because they can drive those short distances, but it gets tricky when you get in that long grass and you get in those bunkers. That's when the course kind of makes its comeback. So the village of St. Andrews is actually a really cool place. The university is amazing, a lot of history here. But if you are just more of a golf fan, the World Golf Museum is also here. We're not going to check it out today because we want to see the rest of the town, but just an interesting thing right across the street from St. Andrews Old Course.
Just making our way into town. We're on North Street.
And St. Andrews has the 3rd oldest university behind Cambridge and Oxford.
And a very famous couple met here. Don't know if you knew this, but
supposedly they met here.
This is where Kate met Will, or Will met Kate, however you want to look at it. And there are several cafes around the town that claim that they met at the cafe. Who knows if it's actually true? It's probably just a marketing scheme, but I don't know, it's kind of fun.
It's pretty interesting to think that they walk these streets, but I do think those cafes probably just saw them in there one time and said, hey, let's say that they met here.
Yeah. What a beautiful quad.
Because of the history, the rich history of this university, it is very hard to get into, much like Cambridge and Oxford. But the really interesting thing about St. Andrews, the university and the town in general, it's kind of hard to get to. We had to drive up here today from Edinburgh. There's really no good train connection. The closest train connection is in the town over, and then you have to take a pretty expensive cab from that station. The grass is so pristine. Definitely more pristine than our university's quad. Wow, founded in 1413. That is just insane. Almost 400 years before the US even existed. So for a pretty long period of time, this country had a lot of religious strife, a real conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics. What was interesting about St. Andrews in particular, at one point, the Protestants completely took this over, and it made it very hard for anyone who was a practicing Catholic to even be here, to even reside here. This made it very difficult for the university. The university, who was at the time trying to let in anyone who wanted to study or had the means or the ability to study, it was hard for them to get here, especially if they were Catholic. So there was a point in time where they considered moving the university to Perth, which is just a little bit northwest of where we are in the country of Scotland. Obviously they didn't do that, and pretty glad they didn't, because it would have kind of messed up the history and everything. But it's interesting to think about that. For a long time, that was a big issue here in Scotland, was whether or not you could practice the more Lutheran, Martin Luther ideas or the actual Catholic ideas. And also, before that even started, there were pagans here, and the pagans all had to be converted by the people who came. So just a lot of religious history, and all of it's a little messy.
Another added layer to this very old university is that it's kind of scattered all over the town. So you'll be walking next to academic buildings and then next to cafes, restaurants, coffee shops.
So if you are a history buff, but you're not so much into the golf and the university, there's also a lot more history here that you can check out, including the St. Andrews Castle. So this castle is mostly in ruin, but it was actually active at the time of Bishop Roger back in 1190. The castle sits right on the coast, and there's also a little beach down here called Castle Sands. It's part of the trail that actually goes all the way around the Kingdom of Fife. You can hike it, you can bike it. It's like a trail that kind of just follows the coastline. Really cool to imagine. For a long time, this was kind of a fortress that sat right on the coast here. The last historical landmark you're going to want to see in St. Andrews is the ruins of the cathedral, a very, very religiously important cathedral. So quite obviously, the site of this cathedral is now in ruin. When most of this land practiced Catholicism, this was a holy grail of a cathedral right here. The construction of the cathedral was originally completed in 1158, just before the fall of the castle we just saw before. Then, of course, during the Protestant Reformation here in Scotland, the cathedral would fall eventually too. For a while, it kind of just remained abandoned because obviously no one could go there. They weren't practicing Catholicism once the Protestants took over and kind of reformed the shape of religion here in this region. It was a true battle of ideology, and that is why we see so much ruin here for Catholic-related structures. Usually you can actually go onto the grounds, go into the graveyard, get a little bit closer to the ruins, but they're doing a little construction right now. Unfortunately, we can't get that far in, but definitely worth your time to check out the ruins of the St. Andrews Cathedral. Originally constructed in 1158. I still just can't believe how old some of this history is.
Menus from here, collapse on this side here. Grab a seat anywhere, order the till for us, please.
Okay. So we just popped into the town of Falkland. This is a pretty historic town. It's more recently famous for being the filming location of season 1 for Outlander. The first couple episodes, this square is pretty iconic. It's where Claire and her husband are on the honeymoon in Scotland after the war.
So Inverness is also a very historic town. It's in the north of the country. We were actually very close to it when we were up at Loch Ness. And that's what this is supposed to be in the show. But they just saw this as a probably an easier location, probably less traffic to deal with and everything like that. It's a very, very quaint little town. But I can definitely see why they can almost interchange the two places. The Kingdom of Inverness at one point was a stronghold for Scotland, and you can just kind of feel like if you were in the 1500s and 1600s, at that time this was a bustling city center. So a pretty unique feature of the town of Falkland, sometimes on the top of the doors you're going to see these insignias. What this means is when a married couple would move into a new building, they would call them marriage lintels. It's their initials in the middle, and then on the sides is a year. So this one would be 1771, and the year either represents the year they got married, the year they moved into the house, or the year the house was built. And these marriage lintels are on houses all over this little town.